Good evening and welcome to Road America for the Absolute Beginners League here at Road Atlanta. And the cars will go on their pace out very shortly, but first of all I'll give you the grid. And pole position in the LMP1 class Daytona Prototypes is the car Kevin Binkley. Alongside him is number 10 Ryan Crofton. On the second row in third place we have one of our only LMP2 cars. That's the car of Adam Bradshaw. He's starting fourth, but alongside him in third place is the first of our GT runners, Proto. On the third row we have number 9 Brian Herring. Alongside him is the 6th place car of Tony Hayes, number 207. On the fourth row is the number 25 car of Vincent Bram. Alongside him the 18 of Johan van der Bold. In 9th position is Jim McInnes, and alongside him on the 5th row Marcus Kramer. 6th row is Leif Patterson and Carl Pitcher. In the 7th row Andy Morgan and Brett Choisin. On the 8th row is George Gregory Nutley and Jimmy Eifling. 17th place Gordon Wilson. 18th is David J. Henry, and 19th Bert Brayans. 20th Darren Kuhn, and 21st Liam Quinn. I've got Cam Walsh alongside me. Cam, what do you think about this race today?
Well, it's going to be very exciting, I'll tell you that right now. I'm very surprised that the fastest car and the slowest car have less than a 5-second gap between the two, so it's going to be very chaotic between the P1 DPs, the P2 Radicals, which there are only 2 of, and the swarm of the GT field.
Great effort from the number 28 there, Bosch Check, putting it onto the second row of the grid alongside the prototype runners.
Yeah, I was watching his pole lap. He was actually following a Daytona Prototype. It was shocking to me to see him take the chicane, the final chicane here at Road Atlanta, at the exact same speed as the Daytona Prototypes. So it's going to be very interesting to see how multi-class racing happens here.
Yeah, only 1.3 seconds off the pole as well, so a fantastic lap from that number 28 car. And quite a lot of GT cars, and when the LMP prototypes come to lap them, it could be quite interesting as well. So close in pace in this race.
It should be, well, scary could be one word, interesting could be another, but exciting is probably the word I'll go with. These guys are racing. This is probably, I think, the second or third event in the Proto class, as they also have another series that many similar drivers were racing in last week with a different set of cars. So they should be familiar with each other, and they should be giving each other a lot of room, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of mishaps here or there.
The good advantage of this track here is there are a lot of straights, so it'd be a little bit easier than some of the twistier tracks for them to lap them.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. It's Road Atlanta, you can always set your car up for one of the 3 different sectors, and I kind of think that the DPs are probably going to be running a lot lower downforce than they should, just to be getting around the lapped traffic, but I'm just wondering how many laps it's going to take before there to even be lap track if everyone's almost running the same lap time. It should be interesting, that's for sure.
I agree with you there. So the car's now coming down the back straight. Once that little kink turn, no, it's not really a turn, it is just a kink. Then they come down to the chicane. Turns 10A and 10B, 11 and 12, and the pace car will go, and then we'll be racing for 70 minutes.
Yes, and these cars are running 80% of their fuel, so we should be looking at about 2 pit stops per car, but I'm not too sure when that window is going to be as they do come down that final steep right-hander, as I'll give it to you, Dan, to start us off.
Yeah, so the pace car goes in, and it'll be Kevin Binkley who will then just take the pace of the field. He's gone now, and it's a good start there from him, but an even better start from Ryan Crofton on the outside. I think Crofton will try and take the lead going into the first corner. He has the car fully alongside, but thinks maybe a bit wider, but I still think he might be able to make it stick as they come down now into turn 2 and 3 towards the S's. It's Kevin Binkley who has lost the lead there to Ryan Crofton, and just behind them is the RUF we said there of Wojciech Potacek. So a good start from him. 4th place has dropped, and Bradshaw's dropped down a place, and the car that's gone past him looks to be the car of Brian Herring. So Brian Herring up to 4th place. They come down the straight for the first time.
Yes, a great start from Ryan Crofton there. He managed to get the, surprising to get the outside line going into that second top of the hill turn, but he managed to get away very cleanly as Kevin looks to go on the inside. here right before the long straight, but he ducks in back in. As Warjack as well had a great start, as well as Brian Herring getting around Adam Bradshaw. I was surprised that he could overtake the P2 car. But everyone's getting away clean so far as we head up single file and into the chicane for the first time. Looks like they're coming to you too wide.
Yeah, Wright made a little bit of a mistake coming out of turn 7, and it sort of compromised him a bit on the straight, and it's going to chance maybe down the inside for Kevin Brinkley, and Brinkley it is, has gone through into the lead, but Ryan Crofton again fights back, but Brinkley on the inside, he should make the move stick there coming into turn 12, which he does, so the first lap is going to be led by the car of Kevin Brinkley, but Ryan Crofton coming down the inside again down to turn 1, and you've got that RUF and keen attention to make sure anything that goes wrong he has a chance to get back, but as they come down towards 2 and 3 again, it's a fantastic battle in the lead between these two cars.
Yes, it is, and Warjack makes Ryan go a little defensive almost. I know he's not trying to pass him. I think he just surprised him as he stopped getting up the turn. The DP, of course, being able to stop a little faster in that rough, which gives Kevin some space, some much-needed breathing room to settle in here. It's 70 minutes, but definitely it's like they're racing a sprint race for sure, as Adam Bradshaw recovers into 4th position from Brian Herring.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Adam Bradshaw had taken that 4th place back, but already the GT class was starting to make a bit of a break. The gap between himself and the car of Vincent was about 2 seconds at the end of that first lap, so the field's starting to maybe neutralise a little bit here, but further back there's a battle in 8th place between Tony Hayes, yes it is, in the Daytona prototype, trying to catch up on the car in front of him there as well. I think that's the car of, it's not that, Johan de Bilde's made a few places. As the cars now come to finish their second lap, Kevin Brinkley has started to pull away a bit from Ryan Crofton.
Yes, and he's been doing a very good job. He's almost got a full second, which is good, as I think these front guys, they had a little bit of a spot now. They're seeing where each other's cars are good and quick and not so good at, and now they're probably settling into the long haul, reminding themselves this is a 70-minute race. So they are going to have a lot of time to catch up to each other for sure. As Warjack has just checked out so far. He is absolutely ripping away here.
Yeah, and also from 5th, a good bit of a battle between some of the GT cars. You've got Vincent Braham, Brian Herring, Marcus Kramer, and a car going a bit wide there's Johan van der Bolde in the roof. So we've got a good battle of cars here. And there's also a spin there I saw in the background. Who's that? Who's gone off the track there? It was a GT, I think. The AA7 cars, that's Green Nutley, so unfortunately for him, he's spun, but he's been able to carry on, but we're dropping near enough right to the back of this field.
Yeah, looking at it, looks like he just got on the power at a wrong time here. That corner is very notorious. One tire dropped off into the sand, spun him around, and luckily he's able to safely turn around and recover nicely.
Yeah, so very well done for him to recover it without causing another incident, which we see sometimes. But Adam Bradshaw, I think maybe trying to catch up to Warjack a bit in the GT car. So our LMP2 leader, Adam Bradshaw, gets a bit loose there coming out of turn 12. He didn't rather hold on to that. I thought for a second he may have lost it there, but good driving there from Adam Bradshaw to keep hold of it there.
Yes, he's done a very good job. He raced last week in the Spec Racer Ford in that class last week, obviously different cars. He's in the Spec Racer Ford racing against MX-5s, and he was able to hold his own there. So he's doing a very good job once again in the alternate car, as it would be.
Yeah, now battle for 7th place between Marcus Kramer and Johan van der Bolde. Probably one of the closest battles on track. The number 18 car trying to get past that number 32 as they come down the straight between turn 5 and 6, so we'll be hoping to maybe get a draft down the back straight, and I think the draft may play quite an important part in this GT class.
It should be. Wind's coming out of the north, so it's not going to really help anybody, but it looks like Johan van der Bolde, who was our Kia driver, our Kia race winner last week in his class, as he's looking to get past Marcus Kramer. Also of note, I do have to say Brian Herring is right behind Vincent Brem as he's going to go too wide into the final chicane here. Brian Herring in the MP4 as he backs off smartly from Vincent Brem, as everybody gets through the chicane cleanly, as I thought Marcus and Johan were going to go at it, but looks like they lined up once again.
Yeah, Johan actually got past Marcus Kramer, so put Johan up to 7th position. He's taken the position for Marcus Kramer, so number 18 into 7th place, but behind them they've also got the GT car of Jim McInnes, but also when the Daytona prototypes of LMP1 Tony Hayes amongst that as well.
Yes, I'm not sure if he's really been moving through the field yet. I haven't really seen Tony Hayes as of yet. You should be able to get through the GT field slowly, but surely. But they're getting quite aggressive between him and the front, so we'll see if he can get through. As looks like now Vincent Brem and Brian Herring are still setting up for, or Brian's going to set up for once again on this straight here. I believe the McLaren's got a little bit more top end than the Z4 here on this straight.
Yeah, and that could be very important because there are quite a few straights on this course, and not only is there a couple of them, they are actually quite long, so Brian Herring may have a chance to make that move on Vincent Lam if he get close enough, but I don't think he quite get close enough this lap as they come down to the chicane. But up front, Kevin Brinkley and Ryan Crofton seem to have pulled away a little bit now. The two of them are over 4 seconds in front of Wojtek Poracek, and the field starting to spread out a little bit now after 6 minutes and 41 seconds of the race.
Yeah, everyone's kind of cooling in, which is good. You know, you don't want people to be too crazy right off the bat, but I'm really surprised that Kevin's been able to pull this far away from Ryan Crofton. I'm understanding now why Ryan was so aggressive at the start trying to get by, because maybe he knew that Kevin was going to be that much faster than he is. But Warjack's doing good as he's taking a lot of curb in that rough. Bradshaw's closed up nicely to him, but afterwards the field then kind of, not bottles up, but everyone is within, I'd say, 5 seconds of each other from 7th all the way back to 15th or so, or 14th, excuse me.
I think there may have been a mistake from Ryan Crofton on that last lap, because his lap time was a 1:22.065. If you compare that with Kevin Binkley at 1:18.1, and even Wojtek behind him at 1:19.7, so may have been a bit of an off there for Ryan, so a slight moment, but it hasn't cost him position, but has cost him a lot of time.
Yes, and that's unfortunate for us, but good for Kevin, as he's now got a lot of clean air in front of him. It should be a while before he gets back to the lapped traffic. I don't even know where the car in front of him is going to be, that first lapped car, but it should be a while, as now they can settle in. Kevin can settle and just focus on his lap times, which is very important.
Marcus Kramer lost a position earlier to Johan van der Bol, but Jim McInnes also putting him under a bit of pressure there, so the BMW looking to catch up to the roof, and the car with Johan van der Bol starting to pull away a little bit between the two there. Johan's last lap was a 1:19.986 and Vincent a 1:20.2, so slightly pulling away, but these three cars are still keeping that Daytona prototype of Tony Hayes behind them.
Yes, and I actually think they've pulled a little bit more of a gap between them, but I think I saw Tony coming off a little bit. He might just be coming to more grips with the car here at Road Atlanta, which it's a very flowing track, and if you're not used to the track or the car together, it could definitely be a very interesting ride. But Tony should be able to catch up. And who did? Somebody spun here.
And we have had a spin on track.
It's Adam Bradshaw.
Adam Bradshaw,
yep.
So leader in LMP2 has gone round, and unfortunately for him, he's lost some places. And see how that incident happened. It was coming up onto the straight, so have a little look at that and see what happened. A lot of cars went past him. I think he was lucky. See what's happened now. He's come out of turn 5 on the S's, caught the curb, and it spit him up across the track. So very, very lucky there for Adam Bradshaw. He didn't make contact with another car. He's in the middle of the track there, and the other runners did very well to avoid him, but it's going to cost him a lot of positions. But he still probably will be the leader in the LMP2 class.
Yes, it was. He did the same thing as Gregory Nutley, and very good driving from him to not keep it into that wall. That rear end really wanted to slide out, put him in a full spin, and kick him into that outside or the inside wall there, which happens all the time. But he managed to straighten the wheels out and get it back underway. So very good car control from him. But he's lost so much time now.
Also, the battle for second place is hotting up as the car of Wojtek is actually catching up to Ryan Crofton, I think, Cam.
Yes, he is. I'm not sure if he's going to have the cojones to try and get by him, but Vincent Brem is in the background there with Brian Herring, as now they don't have the P2 car between them, as I think Vincent is going a little faster than Warjack, because I think that gap is getting a little shorter and shorter every lap.
Yeah, a bit shorter, but maybe the spin by Adam Bradshaw plays him up a little bit, but yeah, similar lap times that lap between Vincent Poracek and Vincent Brem. Wojciech's lap was a 1:19.527, Vincent with a 1:19.556, but he's got more pressing matters at hand because Brian Herring is going to try and make a move down the inside of the McLaren. He looks out to make the move, thinks better of it, so the positions stay the same. In 4th place is Brem, 5th Herring. Van der Belle, as we said before, pulled away a little bit in 6th position. Then there's 3 cars of Kramer, McInnes and Hayes. And you've got a bit of a gap back to Kyle Pitson and Andy Morgan. So the top 10 quite static at the moment, but still plenty of time for this race to change. We've had just over 10 minutes, so only 1/7 into the race.
Yes, and it's been exciting so far, and I think that as I'm just watching Wojciech go over that top of the hill bump, he gets those rears off, the right side of his car leaves the track every single time. It's really fun to watch, as I think Ryan probably made a mistake or two, as he's now seemed to be normalizing back with Wojciech, as Brian keeps trying to get by entering that chicane. I'm just not sure if the MP4 can really outbrake the Z4 going into that chicane.
Yeah, we saw that on the last lap as they came into 10A and 10B. He meant to make the move. The BMW was able to outbrake him, and as they come down the straight now towards turn 10 again, if Brian is managing to catch up, it'll be interesting to see if he can make a move, because it definitely looks like he catches up on the straight. But under braking, the BMW I think does have the advantage, Cam.
Yes, for sure. Now, I pilot the Z4 a lot. I don't actually have the McLaren. I'm not sure what you drive as far as GT3 goes, and it's probably one of the best spots for the BMW is entering that chicane. So that McLaren is going to have to power by and get into a proper position before the chicane, unless he really wants to just drive it in and push the subject.
Yeah, easier said than done. I've done a little bit of racing in GT3 with the McLaren, and as you say, it is. I think he has got a bit of an advantage in the straight line. Vincent going, Wojciech pounding over that curb, getting to turn 2. He really is giving it some effort here, Cam.
Yes, it's fun to watch him there, as Kevin Binkley is still pulling away 10 seconds between him and Ryan, as Wojciech is only, 3.2 seconds ahead of Vincent Brem, which is not an unbeatable gap, as Johan Vanderbilt just jumped the turn 5 there, where everyone else is spun out. He decided to just kick it to the right. I think I saw at least 3 wheels leave the surface there, as Johan's had a very fun ride in that rough car. But he managed to gather it up and keep on going, and managed to keep the gap between him and Marcus.
Looks like Brian Herring's lost a bit of time as well. He's right behind Vincent Brem. The gap seems to have pulled out a lot between the BMW and the McLaren, Cam.
Maybe he had a moment that Gregory Nutley, another McLaren, he actually just spun out again. Yes, this is live. He did just spin out again. Gregory Nutley just spun as he did before in the exact same spot at turn 5. And I'm almost wondering if the McLaren is having a little bit of trouble going through there, as I don't know where Brian's losing the time to Vincent, but there's a very large gap. He must have had a moment somewhere.
Yeah, so go through the classes quite quickly, because we've had nearly 15 minutes of this race. In LMP1, it's Kevin Binkley who leads by nearly over 12 seconds to Ryan Crofton. In third position in that class is Tony Hayes with the 4th place car Brett Trozen. In LMP2, it's the car of Adam Bradshaw leading, and the other car in the class is going to be Eifling. They're both still running. Then in the GT class, you've got Wojciech leading that class from finishing start. He's currently in 3rd overall as well, so a great drive from him. In 2nd place in the GT class is the McLaren of it's the BMW of Vincent Brem, and then 3rd place we have the car of Brian Herring. Then Jim McInnes is 4th, Carl Pitson is in 5th, and Andy Morgan in 6th place, and that's the top 6 in the GT class. So quite a varied level of performance on the drivers today. Some of the GT cars a lot closer to the prototypes than the others, but it's great racing all through the field.
Yeah, some good driving from here, once again from the Absolute Beginners League, as these guys have always put on a good show, as everything seems to have spaced out quite nicely here. I don't think there are any immediate battles other than Tony Hayes trying to get through some more GT traffic, but Adam Bradshaw, he lost all that time on Jimmy Eifling, but I don't think they're doing similar lap times. I think Adam's faster than Jimmy. But I'm not too sure, of course, those two being the only radicals are P2 class here on track at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, and Andy Morgan has got past Tony Hayes on that last lap. So Tony Hayes, I think, has either had a bit of a moment or he's losing a lot of time. Tony Hayes' has last lap by 1:22.263, and the 58 car of Andy Morgan at 1:21.6. So the BMW goes past the Daytona prototype there.
Yes, I think Tony's just coming to grips with the car. It could be a setup thing. I'm not sure if Tony Hayes has been driving the DP for a long time, but it is a car that takes time to get used to, as well as they did just have the rebalancing of the DP last season, of course, in iRacing. So maybe this is the first time he's been here at Road Atlanta.
About the cars lapping, we're on lap 13 now, and Kevin Binkley is going to start to catch his first couple of cars. He's got David J. Henry, Darren Kuhn, and the car of Jimmy Eifling in the LMP2. So he's got some traffic coming up now, but he's got a 13.8 second lead to Ryan Costa, so he can take a little bit of patience getting through these 3 laps cars.
Yeah, he can take as much time as he's want. He's pulled in, I think it was 4 or 5 laps ago. I said he had a 10-second lead. Now it's 13.8. So he's pulling away quite nicely from Ryan. He should be able to pick and choose his corners. And, of course, driving, I believe these guys are always respectful, so they should be yielding to the leader no problem, as we saw that last week at Summit Point Racing in the other set series.
Comes down the straight now, and as you say, the car of David J. Henry does pull over to one side to let our leader through. Well, yes, he will get that done just before turn 10. So that's the first car on the lap list, and the next 2 in front of him are Darren Kern and Jimmy Eifling in the LMP2 class. Jimmy Eifling. So very, very quickly we see that the Daytona prototype will be lapping the Radical.
Yes, and I think I see some rear damage on Jimmy Eifling. Maybe he kicked the rear off and rear-ended something.
And just in front of the leader, Darren Kuhn off on the grass there, so go a bit further out the way than I think the leader would have wanted him to do, but he's managed to get back on without losing position. He's still in 19th place.
Well, you know, it's a blue flag to yield over a little bit, not go off-roading, but sometimes that happens.
And the closest battle on the track looks like to be the battle for 7th place, because we got the cars of Marcus Kramer, Jim McInnes and Carl Pitson in quite close proximity. So that's 2 BMWs, and the RUF of Marcus Kramer might find himself under a bit of pressure in the near future.
Well, he's under a lot of pressure right now. That BMW is going to be very quick coming through these quick left and right handers here before turn 5, the corner that's dumped many cars. So we'll see if the pressure could potentially dump the rough, as they both take a lot of curbing before the straight. I'm almost wondering, I don't know the rough that all too well. He should have the top speed to keep the BMW at bay here on the straight, but I'm not sure if he can outbrake him going into that chicane. So there's going to be very interesting coming into the chicane here between Jim McInnes and the BMW and Marcus in the rough.
Looks like Jim's actually closing up, so as you said, we'll see about the BMW braking, and he's right on the rear of that rough and coming out now towards the outside line. So the car of Marcus Kramer has got the inside, but Jim McInnes will try to outbrake him on the outside. He does outbrake him slightly, and that will give him the inside for the next corner. A great move there from the car of Jim McInnes, so fantastic move there from Jim McInnes. Will put him up into 7th place.
Absolutely brilliant pass. Very, very good how they both gave each other room. That could have very easily ended in contact, as Kyle Pitson also looked like he wanted to get on the inside of Marcus Kramer for the final turn, but Marcus was having none of it, as now Marcus is going to be able to go on the attack coming up the hill here, I think, as now it's always easier to come up to a car and pass them than staying in front of one, so we'll see how it balances out. But actually it looks like Jim's pulling away quite nicely. So we'll see if Kyle can do the same this lap. That rough getting eaten up by these 2 BMWs.
Yeah, they let Marcus May gone a little bit wide there in the S's, and as you said before, Kyle would have seen what as Jim McInnes did on that last lap, so it'd be interesting to see if Carl Pitson will try and replicate that move going into turn 10A. But as you said, the car there of Jim McInnes has pulled away slightly from Marcus Kramer in 8th position, and Carl Pitson in 9th place. I don't think it's quite going to be close enough there this time.
Yes, I'm not sure if Kyle's going to be able to pull the same move as Marcus. There's also coming into the back picture there is the DP of Tony Hayes. He's gotten, we'll see if he'll actually catch up. I don't see him catching up anytime soon, as they all go single file through the chicane this time. Kyle studying the car in front of him, as that's always a very important thing to do, is learn where his braking points are so you can modify your line to get the line to pass him. But another lap down here, 20 minutes into the race, Dan, and it's been pretty exciting so far for how few cars are actually on track. Only 20 today, but it's been good racing throughout the field so far.
Yeah, as you say, quantity not always the best. Sometimes it's quality over quantity, and that is the case today. So Kevin Brinkley leads by 13.5 seconds to Ryan Crofton, and the next car is going to come across. It's the number 42 car of Gordon Wilson in BMW to lap him. So the car there, the DP and the LMP1. Speaking of LMP1, you said about Tony Hayes, and he's managed to get past the car of Andy Morgan again. So Tony Hayes up into 10th place overall. But here we go, as we said before, Kevin Binkley has a lot of time to get past these slower cars. I think he'll just get on the inside here of Gordon Wilson going into the first corner. No, he decides not to make the move there. So he obviously knows he's got a bit of a gap in hand, so he's going to pick his places a bit more carefully than maybe if he had pressure behind him.
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier to give up 2 or 3 seconds here rather than giving up 20 or 30 seconds and beating it into a wall. So he's being very smart about getting around this lap traffic. Of course, the GT car, as Warjack showing us, is doing very similar lap times to those guys.
Yeah, fantastic effort there from RaceSpotTV. And there's a car off as well. And that is the car
That's Nutley
of
again.
Gregory Nutley. So Gregory Nutley is having an absolutely torrid time, and it's that same corner again, turn 5, that has catched him out now on a 3rd occasion.
That's just, that corner bites any car in any class. I, of course, raced the Lotus 79, and we have massive issues there too. So there can be numerous reasons why in the setup that could be happening. And it's just unfortunate to see him having a hard time with that corner, but I don't blame him, as that is a very, very tricky corner.
And speaking of tricky, Ryan Crofton is now coming across 3 of the slower cars, so it'd be interesting to see if he's able to maybe catch up a little bit of time on Kevin Binkley, but also he will not lose much time to Wojtek Potacek. He's only about 2 seconds in front of that rough, so he gets past the first car. That's the David J. Henry's entry, so he's got 2 more in front of him, including the the Radical from LMP2 of Jimmy Eifling. So it looks like he'll be able to get past these cars in a relatively quick manner, but he's got the car of Wojciech, but Wojciech still has the other cars to get past as well. So I think Ryan Crofton still will have the advantage. He's got past 2 to 3 already going into turn 1.
Yes, Ryan's, I think, going to be able to get a nice gap here between him and Wojciech. Wojciech, I think, can do very similar lap times on a pure track, but with all this lap traffic, I think Ryan's obviously going to have the upper hand, being in the Daytona prototype, as he takes quite a bit of curbing. I think Wojciech's going to have a little bit more of a difficult time as Ryan goes off. Ryan eats some dirt there, actually, in turn 5 once again, the corner of the day as it is, as he actually recovers and goes on the outside of the wounded P2 car of Jimmy Eifling. It was a good save there that had the potential to be very, very disastrous.
Yeah, good save there from Ryan Crofton. We've seen that from a couple of drivers where made good saves where otherwise they would have been off. But Wojciech has gone past the BMW now, so just 1 car between himself and that 2nd place car of Ryan Crofton, and that's the Radical of Jimmy Eifling. And Wojciech leading his class there in 3rd place overall. 2nd place in the GT class, you've got Vincent Brem, and 3rd place Brian Herring. They're not separated by too much, but I think the gap has stabilised between the 2 there, because a few laps ago we saw Brian Herring right on the rear end of Vincent Brem, but he's pulled out a little bit, and then there's a bit of a gap back, about 3-4 seconds to the next car in class, which is Johan van der Velde.
Yes, Johan's doing a good run. He, of course, got past Marcus Kramer, who's lost that position to Jim McKillinis. So it's been good racing so far, as now that we're about 23 minutes in, we have to start reminding ourselves that we have 1 car off. Is that Warjack? No, I don't believe it is. That was another car, as I was looking at Vincent Brem's car, and he had some minor front-end damage on that driver's side, so I'm wondering, there must have been contact somewhere, obviously, but perhaps some lap traffic or something we just didn't see, as Brian Herring has closed right up onto the rear end of this BMW.
Yeah, as we said before, traffic is playing a bit of a part there. The fact that Jimmy Eifling may have held Vincent Brem up a little bit there has not allowed Brian Herring to come right alongside near enough the car of Vincent Brem as they turn into turn 6, but you're trying now, said before, to do the out-braking move at the end of the straight, but there's another car, a lap car to get past. There's another BMW which moves right over offline, so good driving from him. He doesn't want to get involved in this scrap between these 2 guys for 2nd place in class, but Vincent Brem pulled out a little bit there, but there could have been a bit of an opportunity there for Brian Herring, and he may be thinking in future that traffic may be his chance to get past that BMW.
Yes, and as I was trying to say before we had that those guys close way up, I still think Vincent's damaged that front end a little bit. They'll have to repair that when they come to the pits, and that's what I was getting at. 25 minutes in, these guys are only running 80% of the total fuel that they can carry, and the McLaren has always been better on the fuel than the BMW. So we'll see Brian being able to probably take less fuel, so he's probably got a lighter car before they enter this pit window.
We've got a spin. Sorry to interrupt you. We've got Adam Bradshaw on the grass coming out of turn 12. So he had a moment early on at turn 5, and he's had a moment coming down the hill into turn 12. And we'll see what's happened to him there. What's happened is he's just come out the corner, put the power on maybe a bit too early, and slid onto the grass. But the radical of Adam Bradshaw off again. Yes,
too bad for him. That's the second spin, but very... well, not thankfully, of course, as you always want to see more cars, but he is the leader in P2, and it will stay that way. Jimmy Eifling a lap down, as I think at this point Adam's getting pretty close to getting it a lap down, but there being quite a gap between him and Jimmy Eifling, as his car is still undamaged.
And speaking of damage, Ryan Croft, I think, has hit something. It looks like a lot of damage to the front of that Daytona prototype. We'll have to come back and have a look at that, but unfortunately for our second place contender, and it's at turn 5 again, I think it is, you know. It's come out of turn 5 there, clipped the curb, and as we saw earlier, it's just spat him out, but this time, unfortunately, he's a hard impact into the wall there.
Absolutely violent impact. I'm surprised he's only ripped the front off of that. I don't think he picked up any wheel damage, but once again, that turn 5, you get off of that curbing. And when you're on the power, your tires are going from rippled curving to concrete, because the concrete is of course on the outside there, and it'll lose traction in a heartbeat coming uphill like that, and it's caught absolutely everybody out in every single class so far today. So Kevin, of course, having quite a gap now between now basically having no competition. It's almost worrying if he's going to get taken out on turn 5.
Yeah, unfortunately though for Ryan Croft, and he's come to the pit lane to see what can be done to that Daytona prototype, but we're talking about Tony Hayes earlier, and that's actually moved him up into second place in class, and we said before it looked like he may have been a bit slower, but went past the car of Andy Morgan, and now he's closing up to Carl Pitson for 8th overall, but Tony Hayes now has second place in class, and the good news is, it looks like Ryan Crofton is going to stay in the pits and try and repair that car rather than put it in for a day, because obviously, and speaking of DPs, we got Brett Trosin in trouble as well, so our DP runner's having a bit of a tough time the last couple of laps. He's coming back on track now, but it looks like Brett Trosin's had enough as well.
Yes, and that looks like that was turn 1, as he it already looked like he had already picked up right side or left side damage, as he went off and he managed to pancake that right into the tire barrier. The tires still look straight, but a lot of damage on that 944 car of Brett Trosin. He'll have to take it into the pits. I guess there's never a good time to have accidents like this, but right near the pit window is not too terribly bad, as I think Ryan is going to take a full thing of fuel. They look like they're still repairing that car, that DP of him, as Kevin is now just going to be able to drive away without really any care in the world now. Race is his to lose, I think.
Definitely, as you say, Cam, it is all in the hands now of Kevin Binkley, but it also looks like the car we saw Brett Trosin will come to the pit lane. He's coming down the straight now, and he'll try and get repairs as well, because only 4 of them in the class in the DPs. Any positions they can gain will be an advantage. I think this is another reason why you see Ryan Crofton trying to get the car fixed as well, because when the same with little cars in the class, it only takes a moment similar to that for one of the other cars, and it could change the complexion of the race completely for them. But Kevin Binkley, 22.7 seconds in lead. In fact, it's gone up now to 23.1. So he leads LMP1 from the GT car of Wojciech Puszek. But Brian Herring up into second place with Johan van der Bar in third. So we've lost Vincent Brem. He's had a little moment and he's dropped down the field. He's now down into 5th place overall. So Vincent Brem, who was in front of Brian Herring, now finds himself not only behind Herring but the car of Johan van der Belde.
Well, and that's too bad for him, but maybe he'll get back up to speed, as I still think I see some damage on that driver's side. I'm almost wondering where these guys are picking this stuff up, almost a curbing or something. But Vincent's going to have to reset as he looks at the car in front of him. That's a lapped car of Darren Kuhn. But he should be trying to get back up to Johan van der Belde. He should be able to make up 4 seconds, as he showed us he was faster before. But who knows now, as I think the tires are really starting to go away here 30 minutes into this 70-minute race.
Yeah, and as you said, pit stops may be happening pretty soon, because we're coming up towards the halfway point in the race, and as you predicted before the race, I think they'll be taking 2 stops in this race. But I think if they can keep it going to 35 minutes, it may very well be a one-stop race.
Maybe. They seem to have made it this far. Maybe with some fuel saving they can make the other 35 minutes, as Jim McInnes is in the pits, as he's actually, he'd already left, as I don't know who else is in the pits, as looks like Warjak's picked up some front end damage.
Yeah, the car of Wojciech, and he's lost a lot of time as well, because the car of Brian Herring is now right behind him, and that last lap of Wojciech, a 1:27.5, so maybe worth having a look at
Dan,
the replay.
I'm gonna ask you one question. Which turn do you think it was?
I'm guessing it may have been turn 5, Cam.
It was
right?
turn 5 indeed. He ate turn 5. He ate the curbing. This time it bounced over to the right from him, and he ate the outside tire wall. This turn 5 is absolutely murdering the field.
Yeah, it's a nemesis of this field in the Absolute Beginners League. Turn 5 will be the subject, I think, of a lot of annoyance at the end of the race by these drivers. That's at least 4 or 5 who've claimed victim to turn 5. But at the moment, Wojciech still has the position though, so he hasn't lost the lead in the GT class. But Brian Herring, as we said, right behind him. In third place in class is Johan van der Bar. We've got Vincent Blem in fourth, but he's also under pressure because Marcus Kramer in the rough behind him as well. So as the race has gone on, this GT class seems to have exploded into a bit of excitement in the last couple of minutes.
Yes, certainly, as Brian's looking to get past him now. The car that was pressuring him, Vincent Prem, picked up some damage or had an off, and now Warjak's had an off, and he's had an incident. So Brian Herring is going to the inside up here, turn 1. Warjak's trying to close the door as he will. Brian backs off, as it doesn't look like that front end damage is impacting that rough too much, as I think the wheels are definitely straight on it, but we'll see when they come to the pits whether he'll have to make mandatory repairs or they'll be able to send him out with that much damage.
And this is a battle, don't forget, for the GT lead, so Wojciech pulling away a little bit, but towards the end of the lap, it looked like Brian was right on the back spoiler, so very interesting battle for the lead there. Third place is Vincent van der Bode in GT, and Vincent is fourth, and I think the car of Marcus Kramer's gone off, so another GT casualty, and it's the rough of Marcus Kramer, and that was coming up into turn 2 and turn 3. It looks like he's just lost control of it going into the right-hander, and he's clouted the wall quite hard there as well, so another one of our GT runners has had a bit of a problem.
Yes, it doesn't look like he picked up as much damage as, say, Wojciech, but it's still too bad for him. It looks like I don't think he locked it up, but again, these tires are really starting to slop off of these cars now, as we're 33 minutes into a race, and I'm not sure how much tires these guys have left. They're trying to make their fuel windows, but I'd say it's almost be easier to just come in, get the 4 tires, and fuel up.
Yeah, so as I said before, GT class is definitely getting a bit exciting. We're at the halfway point of the race now, 33 minutes out of the 70, and Kevin Brinkley leads by 34 seconds. We said before about the car of Tony Hayes. He's been minding his business, staying out of trouble, and he's now up into 6th place overall. So Tony Hayes in the LMP1 Daytona prototype was outside the top 10, but he just and then there's a car coming out of the pits now, which is Jimmy Eifling, I believe, in the MP2. Yes, it is Jimmy Eifling. So he's made a pit stop, and he had a little bit of damage, Cam said before, so it'll be interesting to see if that's been fixed. But the 207 of Tony Hayes, 6th overall, goes a little bit wide there into the S's, goes onto the grass, but 6th place, he'll be quite happy with that from where he was earlier in the race.
Oh, certainly. He started way back in, what was that? He didn't start 6th, did he? I guess he started 6th. Oh, I think he spun out early. I think, if I remember correctly, I think he spun out and ended up having to go way back in the field. So he's just plucked away at the laps. He's gotten the lap times down to low 20s, early 19s, which is good for him over the course of the race. So he's looking to just keep it all together and hopefully come home with a nice 2nd place, as long as turn 5 doesn't take another one from us.
And Brian Herring actually overtook Wojciech into turns 10A and 10B, but Wojciech going into the pits now, so the driver who was in 3rd place, Proto, coming into the pit lane, and none of the other cars in that class seem to come through, but it looks like we may have lost Marcus Kramer from the race as well, unfortunately. Have a look back and see what's happened there, but Marcus Kramer, it looks like he came into the pits and he decided enough was enough, so it looks like Marcus Kramer may have had some quite major damage issues because he came into the pits and then decided to retire the car. So very unfortunate for Marcus Kramer, one of the top runners in the GT class, but he's now out of the race.
Yes, and that's very unfortunate for him to hear. One of the numerous roughs is, I think, between the rough and the GT and the Z4, those are the two numerous cars, is we lose one already. Johan Vandervelde, though, he's been capitalizing very slowly through the race. He started in 8th, and now he's up to 3rd, and he does have Brian Herring in his sights. I don't think that Johan's catching Brian with any quick lap times, but he's slowly plugging away and he's keeping it in the sights in case something happens to Brian, which of course is a potential here.
Yeah, Wojciech Porcek just left the pits now. He's coming through from us turn 5, but he's been able to escape, so not too much damage. And Ryan Crofton, who we saw earlier have damage, he's 6 laps down, but the car is still in the pits, so he's still hoping to get out at some point, which is good to see his endeavour. But Kevin Brinkley at the moment has a 39.6 second lead over our GT leader Brian Herring. In second place in that GT class, Johan van der Velde. 4th is Vincent Brum, but Vincent Brum now under pressure from Tony. Sorry, it wasn't Tony Hayes. I thought it was Tony Hayes. It was actually the car there of Brett Chosen, and Brett Chosen is a lap down. But the car of Tony Hayes is 5th place overall now, and it looks like we may have some. In fact, this was Wojciech went into the pits. That's the reason the timing and scoring is updating itself quite a lot, because he went into the pits, and I think he may have had to do a little bit more of a pit stop for damage, because at the moment he finds himself in 8th place and he's actually dropped a lap down. So the number 28 Ruff, who was leading the GT class for so long, now finds himself a lap down.
Yes, and I believe right in front of him is Gregory Nutley. I think Gregory might be 2 laps down. Yep, Gregory's 2 laps down, so this is still lap traffic for Wojciech, but he's going to have a long road ahead of him as he barrel hops over that that top of the hill turn 2. He is still going after it. You would think he might be a little more minimized, a little more careful, but no, he is still absolutely attacking this track with no regard here, as he is going to be hopefully blazing through the field here and making some very exciting moves as he does go past Gregory there, who lets him by with no problem.
And into the pits comes Johan van der Velde. So Ruff, that was in second place in the GT class, has come into the pits, and interesting to see if he had any damage. I don't think he had that much damage, if any at all, so it'd be quite a quick stop compared to the stop for Wojciech. But what that does mean is it means it's elevated the car of Vincent Brum up into second place in the GT class. Carl Pitson will go into 3rd place, and Andy Morgan, who would have taken 4th, into the pits as well. So we do have a bit of an activity in the pits here in the GT class, Cam.
Yes, and Adam Bradshaw had another off, as we did see in the replay there. So another off for him, but thankfully that car is still spotless. Very good driving from him, as Johan Vandervelde needed to come into the field as who's that? Eifling goes off. The other P2 car has an off, and he picked up a lot of damage.
That rear spoiler could be very much damaged, and he's gone into the wall at turn number 1. I think that's where he's picked up his damage. He's gone into turn 1. It's a bit too hot there. Gone across the grass, gone across the gravel, and then it's hit the left-hand side of the car. So unfortunately, Jimmy Eifling has had another off. He's had a couple of those today, but it's another one to add to the collection. And there's been, I think that's done quite a bit of damage to that car. And Wojciech just coming behind him. That was a very close moment there for Wojciech. He nearly hit the back of the Radical. It's going very, very slowly down through turn 7, and that could have been a very hairy moment for the number 28 car of Wojciech Porcek. He's already had one moment, and he probably his heart skipped a beat there, seeing that damaged Radical in front of him going into turn 6 and 7.
Oh, definitely, for sure. I think Wojciech, he's just he's putting the blinders on. He's trying to put as fast lap times as he can, and I don't think he was expecting the P2 car to be that slow. But of course, massive amounts of damage on the left side of that car. He'll probably end up taking into the pits, Jimmy Eifling. But also of note here, Brian Herring, I don't think he's been to the pits yet. Of course, the McLaren always being a less thirsty beast than the other two GT cars, but it seems to really be capitalizing on it, as he's now got some 20 seconds between him and Tony Hayes, who is now overall in 3rd.
Yeah, Brem and Pitson, they come into the pits on this lap, so BMW of Vincent Brem has had his service, and Carl Pitson is just leaving the pits as well. So 2 of our front GT runners have come into the pits. There's another car I just saw coming into pits, Jimmy Eifling, coming to repair that damage. So Jimmy Eifling must 3 laps down. It looks like it could be a bit more, but also worth noting, Cam, the car of Ryan Crofton back on track, 9 laps down, still missing that front section, but Ryan Crofton back into the race and 20th overall, 9 laps down. He's only got 5 more laps to catch the car of Marcus Kramer, who's retired, so he should gain at least 1 position by the end of this race.
Well, maybe he's seeing that just like he was taken out, that other cars will probably be taken out, as this car is not going to be the best of handling, but he'll be able to plow around the car, the track in that wounded DP. So he'll definitely pick up a couple from retirements, but we'll see how far he goes, as he does go very wide coming off of turn 5. Not sure how much damage that's got, but Tony Hayes, though, he is in the pits. I believe he's the first of the DPs to go into the pits for actually fuel. Of course, there's only 2 of them running anymore without any damage, but he'll take enough fuel to get to the finish, as he's a minute and 10 seconds behind Kevin Binkley.
Yeah, coming out of the pits he is now, but also the other car in the pits, the DP, is the Brett Trozing car that had damage earlier, and that's the second pit stop for that car, so wonder if he's had a bit of an incident, because he wasn't in the pits that long ago, Cam.
Yes, maybe he's not very happy with the handling of the car and seeing what the team can do for him there, the 944 team. But right now it's just everyone's cycling through the pits, as looking at the GTs, the 2 roughs that are still up front, Johan Vandervelde and Wojak Projak, are leading over 3 BMWs, one the Adam Bradshaw P2, and then another 3 BMWs. So, you know, the slower cars, the ones who have not been doing the absolute blazing fast laps, are...
And our race leader, Kevin Binkley, is coming in. He's gone down to the pit speed limit. He had about a 47-second lead over that McLaren of Brian Herring. He had lots of time over Tony Hayes. He had a whole lap, in fact, over his rival in the DP class. So Kevin Binkley can quite literally maybe have a cup of tea, read a newspaper, and still come out in front. He's got that much of a lead at the moment in class.
Yes, absolutely, and he's been doing good laps, lap after lap after lap. A little slow last lap, but that's okay. He's definitely got the gap where this is his own race to decide, and as long as he keeps his nose clean, this is definitely be in the bag, as we're now 42 minutes into this race. As I'm having to wonder, now when is Brian Herring going to come in, as Brian Herring looks to take the overall lead here at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, the GT car, Brian Herring, taking the lead in that McLaren. He's on now on his 33rd lap, so definitely looks like it's going to be a one-stop race for the majority of these drivers.
Vincent Brown, as I see, his spoiler's not even connected on one side. He's picked up quite a bit of damage there. Vincent Brown, of course, the 7th place BMW. I'll have to look back and find out what happened to him, as it looks like he ended up coming down the final turn, the very steep right-hand corner, very fast, very flowing, as he took the curbing, hit that grass, that very small grass patch, and ended up canning it into the pit lane wall, as he spun around, and then the rear end crumpled right into the outside wall where the flag stand is. Very unfortunate for him to have that damage there, as he will lose a position to Kyle Pitson, Adam Bradshaw, and Adam Morgan. But that's too bad for Vincent Brown.
Yeah, very unfortunate. The car of Kevin Binkley has come back on the track. I think he came out just in front of that McLaren of Brian Herring, so I think Kevin Binkley didn't actually lose a lead, but it'd be interesting to see if the car of Brian Herring does make it to the pits, number 9. We're on lap number 33. We've had 43 minutes, and again he goes to do another lap. So a fantastic fuel consumption run there for Brian Herring. He leads the GT class, hasn't pitted yet, but he's in 2nd place overall. And you've got to think that he definitely won't be able to go to the end of the race, but he's definitely making it stretch. And it's worth remembering that the more fuel he can conserve now, the less he'll have to have when he comes into the pits eventually.
Yes, I think he's going to be very set here for a good P2 finish, and as long as Kevin keeps his nose clean, it will be P2. As I do have to say, Vincent Brem, once again, as I can see him in the pits, he ended up with that damage, beating it in turn 5, and now they've just removed the entire hood. I don't see him getting back on track, which is too unfortunate, as now Tony Hayes is now having taken on the fuel behind Wojak Projak and Johan Vandervelde, but he should be coming up behind them within these next couple of laps.
And I'm afraid to report to you, Cam, it looks like Vincent is in retirement. So the team have looked at that and thought that with 20 minutes of this race to go that it's not looking good. So unfortunately, another one of our GT runners has retired. So Vincent Brem's BMW will take no further part, it looks like, in this race.
Well, and that's unfortunate, and of course Turn 5 taking a part of that as well. But it's very unfortunate. Road Atlanta is a very grueling, unforgiving track. It looks deceptively simple, but as we've seen here here today, and as we've seen throughout many other different series, this is a very difficult track.
And Gordon Wilson from the GT class is leaving the pits, and behind him is the car of Gregory Nutley. He's had a very eventful day, I think we can say, Cam.
Gregory, yes, he's looped at things around I think a few more times than he'd really like, but I can't really blame him in doing so. He's had a good race so far. He is in 14th, 2 laps down. Vincent, you should be passing the off-track car of Vincent Brem, but he's definitely been exciting as far as from the cockpit goes, but very unfortunate that he's managed to spin out as many times as he has. I don't blame him, though, here at Road Atlanta.
I think this last 25 minutes we could see a bit of a battle for the second place in GT, because Wojtek Procek's about 11 seconds behind Johan van der Belle in that last lap. In fact, van der Belle was a bit quicker than Wojtek. Johan with the 119.8 and Wojtek with a 120.2, but once Brian Herring eventually does make his pit stop, be interesting to see where he comes out. And Brian Herring goes up for another lap, so his 36th lap is coming on now, and this is a fantastic fuel consumption run.
Yes, very, very good. And as somebody, Adam Bradshaw, I believe, is in the pits. He's in the pits. It looks like he's picked up rear end damage, as finally one of those spins collects some rear end damage. We'll have to see where he spun, but unfortunate for him, the Adam Bradshaw, but he's got 6 laps between him and Jimmy Eifling, so he'll still have that P2 lead.
Yeah, the P2 class only having 2 cars, so it's sort of a bit like Ryan Crofton that we saw earlier, that he's got a bit of damage, and the fact that Ryan Crofton has also had a bit of an issue. So Ryan Crofton with a technical issue, we've seen him now drop out to the race. We may see him come back in a bit, but unfortunately his run is coming to an end for the moment.
Yes, and that's unfortunate for him, but he knew that his race was basically done. He was just making laps. As I'm looking to see what happens to Adam Bradshaw here, I'm still looking to see where he picked up this rear end damage, but I'm not too terribly certain.
There's a couple other cars in the pit lane I
it's on the
noticed
replay
as well. It's Brett Trosing who had damage earlier in the pits, and the car of Darren Kuhn. So Darren Kuhn coming into the pits in the number 12 car, as we now see Brian Herring finally come into the pits. So our GT leader Brian Herring on lap 36, just about starting lap 37, will come into the pits. It'd be interesting to see where he is in relation to Johan van der Belle, because that will be the battle for the GT lead. He had about a 35-second lead, so it could be quite tight when Herring comes out of the pit lane for the GT lead.
It's going to be very tight, as they won't have to put as much fuel as you said earlier into that McLaren, but it should be very interesting. I'm going to have to go away for a minute or two, Dan, so it's going to be all you.
That's okay. Vincent van der Belle now coming round the last corner, and Vincent van der Belle, I think, will take the lead in the GT class. So it's going to be very, very tight. Herring just coming out of the pit lane now. In fact, Herring, the pit lane a bit shorter than I thought it would be for Herring, and Herring has taken the lead, but the gap's probably down to about 2-3 seconds. Johan van der Belle just coming out now through turn numbers 2 and 3, and he can see that McLaren right in front of him, so he's going to need no incentive to go, so he can see the class leader right in front of him. So we've had 48 minutes in this race, well, about 50 minutes, as Kevin Binkley comes across the line to start his 38th lap, and it is him who leads the race, and he leads the LMP1 DP class overall. Second place in leading GT is Brian Herring, but as we said before, Johan van der Belle, third overall, is not far behind him. Fourth place and third in GT is Wojtek Procek. He's had a very good run earlier, but unfortunately turn 5 claimed him as a bit of a victim, and he lost some time there, so he was very, very good earlier on, trying to catch up with the likes of Binkley and Ryan Crofton, but now down 4th place overall. But it looks like he may be able to catch up towards the end. We'll have to see. Tony Hayes, 5th overall, 2nd in the DP LMP1 class. He's had a very good afternoon, Tony Hayes. Cars around him have gone off, but Tony been very consistent in that Riley Daytona prototype. He's 5th overall. And then we've got one of the BMWs from the G class and 6th. That's Jim McInnes. 3 of them in a row. Carl Pitson is 7th. And 8 is Andy Morgan. And the cars of Pitson and Morgan are the first cars who have lost a lap. So they're the ones who are a lap down. Leif Peterson 9th and Gordon Wilson runs like your top 10 in the BMW. As for retirements, so far we've lost Ryan Crofton, Marcus Kramer, Bert Bearings, and the last car on track is currently Jimmy Eifling in 17th. He's 9 laps down, and the car of Adam Bradshaw still in the pits. So Jimmy Eifling, depending on what's happened with Adam Bradshaw, if he can keep turning these laps, he may take the lead in the LMP2 class. There are only 2 of them running at the moment.
Yes, and hello Dan, I'm back again. Awful timing on the pizza delivery, but I believe it was the one that Kevin Binkley ordered while he was in pits, because he's got such a gap you can do that. Brian Herring and Johan Vandervelde, I'm very excited to see that they're so close together.
Yeah, they are very close together. The last time there was half a second between them, but I think Herring may have pulled out a slight bit on this lap, but very close, and probably the closest battle in the field, and it is for the GT lead. So with about 20 minutes to go, this could be the battle to watch until the end of the race.
It certainly could, of course. The 2 undamaged GT cars, of course, getting up to the front, as we'll see as they come past the line who's got the faster lap between Brian Herring and Johan Vandervelde. As Brian Herring is about 0.3 of a second faster, but as we said earlier, he's got to carry less fuel, such a less run, and of course he uses less fuel than the rough. So it would be normalized, I think, on the straight. But it's just going to be interesting to see these 2 cars going at it. Johan, of course, is going to have the blood in the water, as we'll see if he can't pressure Brian into a mistake, or if he himself might have a mistake at that notorious Turn 5 there.
Turn 5 is, I think that's going to be stuff of nightmares, these absolute beginners league drivers. And Pro Check lap at 1:20.832, so a little bit slower than the 2 cars in front of him, but he's running a similar speed to Jim McInnes, and Jim McInnes is only 6 seconds behind that rough of Wojciech. So at the end of the race, that could be another battle to watch, the final podium step in the GT class.
Well, it certainly could, and it's good to see the BMW up there in 3rd as Kevin Binkley laps another car and will be coming up to lap Jim McInnes probably this time by.
Yeah, so Jim McInnes in 6th place is about to get lapped. That just shows the superiority that Kevin Binkley's shown over the rest of the field. He's got a 55-second lead, or 56 now, as Brian Herring crosses the line. And there is a chance maybe before the end of this race that Kevin Binkley will lap the whole field. I don't think we'll quite see that though, but I think he probably might get up to about Wojciech in 4th place. So a very, very dominant run from Kevin Binkley so far this afternoon.
Yes, he had massive pressure in the first couple of laps. I think Ryan Crofton was the only one who was able to come to the call of Brian Binkley's lap times here, as he's now able to throttle back. But before, he was dipping into the 117s. Of course, he'll probably have the fastest lap of the race. I don't see why he wouldn't, as since Ryan Crofton had that first initial off all that time ago, he's just been able to not coast along, but certainly drive at his own speed.
And that LMP2 battle we were talking about, Jimmy Eifling's got a gap down between him and Adam Bradshaw to 3 laps. Adam Bradshaw's still in the pits at the moment, but Jimmy Eifling is slowly clawing in those laps. He's only got 3 more to get to take the lead in that class, so he'll be hoping he can get round the track. His last lap time of 1:24.6, and a couple of the cars have just gone past him from the GT class. But for Jimmy, getting in some fast laps now would be quite important, because while Adam's in the pits, there's nothing he can do about it.
Yes, and Jimmy looks like he's got less damage than Adam Bradshaw, so it will be interesting to see what they do. Adam, of course, he's going to not do it.
Brian's had enough. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the lead in GT changes. Coming up to the hill towards turn 2, Brian Herring went off the track on the left-hand side, and as you said before, Johan Vandervelde may try and force him into an error. I think that's just what he's done there. So a change in the lead for the GT class. The rough number 18 of Johan Vandervelde has taken the lead, and now Brian Herring was to be trying to get that place back. I think Brian Herring may have been a little bit quicker than Johan in the last couple of laps, so be interesting to see this. But the GT lead, as we said before, it would be quite an exciting battle. It has just the pendulum has swung Johan Vandervelde's way with a little mistake there from Brian Herring.
Yes, and I will say that has probably got to be the best save that I've seen today. Going into the grass at turn 1 at full speed doesn't end well anytime, so for him to be able to careen it back onto track is very, very good on him. As it will be very interesting to see him chasing down Johan Vanderbilt, as I believe the gap will be closed. It's just going to be a matter of how wide that rough can be, the rough being a very small car compared to the McLaren and the BMW, so we'll see if the little rough can hold off the McLaren for the next 20 minutes or so. 15 minutes, excuse me.
So with the 15 minutes to go, it's gone from an endurance race now more into a sprint race, I think, because with 15 minutes to go, there isn't long to go, so the mentality of these drivers may have changed, especially in these top two in the GT class, from the endurance race they were, and I think it's now become more of a sprint race for me, Cam.
Oh, certainly, and it's not like they qualified on pole. Brian qualified in third in his class, but I don't believe these two cars were expecting, as Johan eats some dirt at turn 5, they were not expecting to be fighting for the win 56 minutes into a race, as it looks like Brian is setting up Johan Vanderbilt onto the straight here, as he was using that to very good effect against one of the BMWs earlier. As we'll see if he can get the draft as they go around the lapped BMW car of Darren Kuhn, who should be yielding on the driver's left, and he does. But it should close the door on Brian Herring, though, and he'll have to wait yet another lap before he can set up and make the pass on Johan Vanderbilt for the lead in the GT class.
Yeah, as you said, Cam, I think that may have affected Johan a little bit there, because if Brian hadn't had the slower car, I think we would have seen Brian duck down to the inside, but he's going to have to wait for another lap. But I think Brian Herring is definitely going to pile the pressure on the car of Johan Vanderbilt for the lead of the GT class. We spoke before about Wojciech, and Wojciech's fourth position, and he's dropped back 16 seconds. This last lap at 1 minute 21. So obviously maybe still feeling the effects of some earlier damage, but the GT lead as they come down the S's, it couldn't be any closer. Is car of Brian Herring right on the back here of Johan Vanderbilt as they turn now in towards turn 5, the infamous turn 5, and Johan a bit wide there, clattered the curb, and Brian Herring will have to try and catch him up. I think Johan maybe pulled out a couple of tenths there going into turn 5, being a bit braver, but it looks coming into turn 6, Brian had the better line, and as I come onto the straight, a little bit wide there from Johan, and he's a little bit twitched there, so he's definitely lost some time, and I think that is the invitation that Brian Herring is going to need to get past that rough.
Yes, as Brian already knows what he's going to do. He's already side by side. I think he might actually be able to have the butts to pull out in front and close the door on Johan. Johan is going to have to take the inside corner. It's going to be very, very close and tight as he ends up outbraking Brian Herring through the chicane. Very impressive from that ref car, but Brian is looking to counter, coming down the steep right.
Oh, the grass.
He'll cut the grass. He'll cut the grass. I'm not sure if he picked up a slowdown penalty. If he did, that will be very, very, very notable, as I think he did. He did pick up a slowdown penalty. He is slowing down on the straight and up through turn 1. The marshals did not like him going through the grass and cutting the corner that much, trying to get on the inside of Johan, as he'll have to reset and catch back up.
And the car we saw there leaving the pits was Adam Bradshaw. Now that's quite noticeable because Jimmy Eifling, as we said before, he was quite a few laps down, but he's now taking the lead in LMP2. They're on the same lap, but Jimmy Eifling has just gone past the car of Adam Bradshaw. They're both carrying noticeable damage, but it looks like Jimmy Eifling, he was in the pits like Adam Bradshaw was, but Jimmy Eifling has had a very, very eventful race. So is Adam Bradshaw, but he's leading that class at the moment. But we'll go back to that GT battle, as we said before. Quite exciting. It looks like Johan has pulled out a bit of a gap this time and the straight, so Brian may have to be a bit more braver on the brakes if he's going to get past that rough.
Yes, I thought he definitely would have had the shot outbreaking the rough into the chicane, but he backed out earlier than I thought, and of course, good on them. They're very respectfully driving for sure right now. That's why both of their cars are undamaged through 58 minutes now. We've just got 10 minutes to go. Very happy they added on the 10 minutes here. Normally you see an hour-long race, but 70 minutes. The extra 10 minutes here giving us a great battle coming to the close of this race here at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, the GT class really hotting up. Brian Herring's looking, he's weaving about in the mirrors of Johan. You saw that Brian made an error earlier, and he's going to try and force Johan into one, but very, very close. They come down the S, and it looks like the McLaren has the edge on the S's there. Caught right up to the rough in front of him as it comes to turn 5 now. Both of them, in fact, Johann's maybe gone a little bit wider there, but a similar line taken by Brian Herring taking that curb. And they've got to be very, very careful considering what we've seen so far already in this race.
I was going to say, I think this is going to come down to who is going to try and put more skill into turn 5 than the other driver, because otherwise these cars are very, very well kept. I think the rough is able to minimize the McLaren's weight through the straight with sheer power, and the McLaren is able to catch right up on the S's. Also of note, which might be interesting in these last final 10 minutes, is Kevin Bingley is coming into the picture now. He is just coming onto the straight now, actually, as he should be able to catch up to Brian Herring and Johan Vanderbilt as they go through the chicane single file once again.
That would be quite remarkable if he's able to lap the field. That would just show how well he's been this afternoon, but he's not made a single mistake, I don't think, Kevin Bingley. Very, very good drive. But Brian Herring will be hoping the mistake comes out of Johan Vanderbilt. Johan Vanderbilt, bit of a defensive line there coming into turn 1. I think he might have felt a bit threatened there by Brian Herring, but I think Brian Herring on this turn 3-4 S's section may have a bit of advantage over that rough.
Yes, he's coming, he closes right up through the S's, and then it's all going to come down to who wants to take the braver line in turn 5, which sets him up as Johan, his rear end kicks out on Johan's car. He has to dab onto the brake, but he saves it, as we almost had another turn 5 incident as Brian Herring now swings his car very wide, very different lines through these two corners, which sets them up for the straight. I think the McLaren is close enough where we might see him once again challenging for the GT lead with just 9 minutes to go.
Get a back end twitched out of that rough there, well held from Johan Vanderbilt. As you said before, here we go, the outside line for turn 10A, which will give him the inside for turn 10B. It's Brian Herring in the McLaren against the rough of Johan Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt again later on the brake, so that rough of Johan Vanderbilt able to brake a little bit later, so I think Johan Vanderbilt very brave there, braking late, but he knows he can keep it on, and he's done it again there. So fantastic driving from these two, and Johan Vanderbilt pulls a bit of a gap, but as we'll see, as we've seen in the last couple of laps, I think we'll see Brian Herring catch up as they go through turn 1 and then down into the S's at turn 5, and again gets a bit loose up by the twitch there on the as he came across onto turn 1, but very, very close again is Brian Herring, and these two providing a fantastic battle in the later stages of this race, and Herring now right behind the car of Johan Vanderbilt. They now come into turn number 5, and as Cam was saying, it's about who can be the braver. I noticed that neither driver took the inside curb that time.
Yes, very good on them. They're following each other through as Brian looks to go on the inside of the turn, but I think that was just a dummy there. This is a pure race right now. You've got a yin and a yang between two very different cars, two very different driving cars, and they're putting the same lap times and they're racing each other. Brian now much closer coming through the straight, as we'll see what they can do. They're coming up. I don't think they'll come anywhere near that damaged P2 car, but they are going to be going too wide once again into the chicane. Johan very good on the brakes on the inside corners. He will once again. Brian Herring is just not laying on the brakes late enough. I think he's actually trying to set him up to pass him on the front stretch as they go down this sweeping left-hander here onto the front stretch, of course. Johan taking a little bit more curving than Brian. Would Brian go too wide into turn 1? And he does. Brian noses the car in. Johan gets later on the brakes. The rear end of that car is sliding out as that P2 car goes off and won't be an issue anymore, as that was one of the many lapped cars, as they both are hopping the corner there. The McLaren closing right up. Will they go too wide? I didn't think they almost made contact. That was very close between those two cars as they both take turn 5. I think they just they both put up the white flags through turn 5. They know what's happened there, and they just want to get on with the race.
Yeah, indeed, and I think what we saw that last lap going into turn 10 and 10B was quite notable, because Brian Herring always seemed to back out. I think he was thinking that maybe if he can make Johan Vanderbilt outbrake himself, that Johan Vanderbilt may go across that gravel, and he went to make the move, but then he backed out. So maybe that's something he's going to try and do, try and psych out Johan Vanderbilt. Johan Vanderbilt had a couple of wheels on the grass that looked like near enough, so Johan Vanderbilt right on the limit, and so is Brian Herring, and as we see again, it's that same move, and Brian Herring again looks like he's but he's going to try and get the outside line going into 11 and 12, and this could be the chance for the McLaren as it has a better acceleration coming out of the corner than the rough. He's going to try and go round the outside at the last corner. We've got 6 minutes to go. This is fantastic racing, and a couple of wheels on the grass there for the McLaren as well. But as I go into turn 1, I think Van der Belle will just be able to hold on to it, but the racing between these two is getting more intense by the lap.
He is getting very aggressive. I was wondering why he was braking so early going into the chicane. I know that the GT car can probably go a little deeper, and I was right in that he's setting himself up to try and pass on the straight. He had a great opportunity there, but being very respectful of Johan's car. This isn't just great racing, it's great respectful racing between these two.
Indeed, very respectful stuff, but about traffic before, and they're going to now come across the damaged LMP2 car of Jimmy Eifling in the near future. Jimmy Eifling is the leader in that LMP2 class now by 2 laps to Adam Bradshaw, but the main battle on track has to be this battle in the GT class for the lead. Quite fitting really. That's Johan van der Belde in the rough and Brian Herring in the McLaren, and we've seen this 3 or 4 times in a row that Herring will go towards the outside trying to set up the move maybe for the last corner, as Cam was saying, but Johan van der Belde will take that inside line, and Herring looks like he's braking a little bit later that time. He's mixing his moves up, I think, here, Cam. He's making Johan is very tactical driving from Brian Herring. He seems to have 2 different strategies for that corner.
Yes, and it's very, very interesting to see these guys go at it lap after lap. That rough, while ultimately I think the pace is slower, I know Brian can do faster laps. That rough is being very smart of Johan van der Belde. He knows that that McLaren closed right up entering into turn 2, and he had a dab on the brakes. He should be able to catch up on here through the S's, but I'm almost starting to wonder how long are these guys' tires going to match. Is Johan, I noticed is when they go in, that they took that final chicane, he was actually slower exiting the corner, and Brian had to back out entering the second part of that chicane. So it's very smart tactical driving between these 2 drivers, and it is an absolute joy to watch.
I said earlier about Kevin Binkley, and I think Kevin Binkley, the leader, actually played quite a big role in this battle, because depending on when he catches them, they could either have an extra lap or not, because if Binkley laps these 2 cars, they won't be able to finish the lap, but as they are at the moment, they're going to get an extra lap, so with about 4 minutes to go, Binkley catching these 2 could actually decide the race as such, but Jimmy Eifling very, very slow, and a dive down the inside. What a dive there from Johan van der Belde. Desperation there. He knew he had to get past that damaged LMP2 car, and just about makes it, but Johan van der Belde there, you can definitely tell that he's feeling the pressure with a move like that.
My goodness, that was close. I don't think Jimmy saw him coming. But it looked like he was just turning in, just like a normal, natural turn for him, and he ended up making a very good move as they're both on the comms. I think Jimmy's apologizing as Kevin Binkley is coming up on them, but I'm not sure if Kevin's going to want to pass these 2. He might do the proper thing and let these 2 race it out, which I'm hoping for, as Johan and Brian still going through turn 5. There we go. There we go. Johan, finally the rear end kicks out going into turn 5, of course, the turn of the day, as the nemesis of every single driver here. Will he lose a position to Warjack Project, though, is the thing. I don't think he will. Warjack now entering turn 5, as that is just a very unfortunate way to end a great battle, but Brian finally able to pressure that rough into a mistake.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate there, but as you said, turn 5 has sort of cruelly snatched us away this battle to the line that we were going to have, and I think at the moment, with the situation as it is, Brian Herring is coming up to be close to be lapped by Kevin Binkley. I think Kevin Binkley will have this lap and then one more. It seems like he's a bit slower, so maybe he's trying to make sure that he doesn't have to do the extra lap after this one. The lap was a 1:19.9, and in fact we have got 55 seconds left of this race, so this will be the last lap that Kevin Binkley's come on to now, and I think it's only fitting that we talk about the fantastic job Kevin's done. Everyone else around him seems to have had their own little moments, but Kevin has just kept driving for 70 minutes consistently fast, and he's going to take this race by nearly a lap. A car in front of him going off on the grass. That was a bit of a heart-stopping moment as he saw that happening, but Kevin Binkley has drove a pretty much a perfect race today, I think, Cam.
Kevin has, well, he's put on a clinic, and I always hate saying that because it makes it seem like it was too easy. But Kevin has been able to pound out the good, consistent laps, keep his nose clean, watch out for the lapped cars, and he's going to be coming home with a big win here in the 70-minute race here at Road Atlanta in the Absolute Beginners League.
Kevin Binkley now coming down the straight towards a little kink at turn 9. Just have turn 10A, 10B, 11 and 12, and that will be a victory for Kevin Binkley as he now dabs on the brakes to go through 10A and 10B. As we said before, Cam says he's put on an absolute clinic, and is that the car
Brian Herring? Slow down.
He's slowing down.
I think. Oh, I see what he's wanted to do.
It's a tactical.
Yep. He didn't want to drive another lap. Of course, the race was over. Johan behind anyways, but I'm not sure if Brian had the fuel to take it another lap. Well, we'll see if we can ask him if we can do any interviews or anything like that. But Kevin Binkley, the story of the day, an absolute pristine car. That number 75, as everyone is from his camp is very, very happy with a race like that. Only one stop, as I thought there might have been two, but I was wrong. As Kevin in 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 35 seconds comes away with a win here at Road Atlanta.
A fantastic win for Kevin Binkley, but the GT win goes to Brian Herring. A bit of tactics there letting him through, and a good drive from Brian Herring. In second place in the GT class, Johan van der Bouw. In third place is Wojciech Proto. I think he might be a bit disappointed, really. He was challenging the second of the Daytona prototypes early in the race, but an error from him saw him have to have a lengthy pit stop for damage, and that's cost him. Fifth place and second overall in the DP class, Tony Hayes. So a good drive from Tony as well. Might not have been the quickest driver out there, but his consistency and not making mistakes. He's just finishing fifth overall and second in class. Fourth place and sixth overall in the GT class, Jim McInnes. Seventh GT car is a GT of Carl Pitts, and so he'll come through, take what will be fifth place in class. Andy Morgan is sixth in the GT class. Seventh is Leif Peterson, and rounding out the top 10 is the number 42 car, Gordon Wilson. So Gordon Wilson takes a top 10 finish and 8th place in class. Darian Kuhn is 11th, 3 laps down. 12th place will be David Henry, and winning the LMP2 class, the Radical, is the car of Jimmy Oefling, the 00 car. The LMP2 class saw a lot of drama, both cars having offs, and Jimmy Oefling has won that race by 2 laps. Adam Bradshaw in the pits as well, so the 2-lap difference between Jimmy Oefling and Adam Bradshaw. Another driver who may have had a bit of a testing afternoon, Brett Trosling in the DP class. He's finished third in class, so he gets a podium, but 14 laps down. We saw Gregory Nutley earlier having his various incidents, and he's finished 16th. But I believe we now have the race leader, Kevin Binkley, with us.
Yes, how you doing?
I'm very good, thank you, Kevin. A great drive from you there. It seemed as if it was almost too easy at times for you.
Yeah, this is my home track here, so I've got a lot of time messing around at this track, and you know, it's one of those courses that really benefits good rhythm, and there's a certain rhythm to this track that you really need to nail, and I just I love the course.
It definitely seemed like it, and from a driver's point of view, you can tell us about turn 5. A lot of drivers have mistakes, and that's the corner as you come down the S and you take the left-hander onto the straight. Is there anything about that corner which you think is a bit something which can cause a problem? Because you saw a lot of drivers having offs there today.
Oh yeah, it's you're coming down through the S's, so the car is under a lot of load. You got a whole lot of grip and everything feels great, but then you come over that little hump for turn 5 and the car gets really light, so the back end starts to float and it's very easy to spin out there, so you got to be real careful on the throttle.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't think you understand turn 5 for us. It probably was, we probably had at least 10 cars spin there over the course of the race. So for us, it was our notorious turn 5 of the day, as just very unfortunate what happened between Brian Herring and Johan van der Belt. But you put on just such a great race. You lapped the entire field. Now let's go to the very beginning. The only time you really had great pressure was Ryan Crofton. Just take us through that start there.
Yeah, he got a really great start, and I didn't really want to take it too wide into turn 1, so I kind of breathed the throttle a little bit, let him get in front. And with these longer races, you know, it's the mindset has to be to, you know, make it to the end, get a car set up that's good. So I wanted to fall in line behind him, and you know, we actually went too wide a couple more times that lap, but finally I had a good exit on one of the corners. I got in front of him, and I was able to focus on my race and my rhythm and not look in the rearview mirrors that much. But yeah, it was just one of those things. You got to fall in line, get comfortable, because you got cold tires and everything's happening all of a sudden. So you just got to get into your rhythm as fast as possible.
Yes, and it was a very good showing throughout the field. Of course, not many P2 cars today, only 2 of them. But ultimately a good DP race from you. A clinic, as I don't like saying, but it is what it is. You definitely put on a great show for us, Kevin. So anybody you'd like to thank or anything?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you guys for putting on the broadcast, all the racers in the race. Everybody was real respectful at times, and it gets tight out there pretty quick, especially with some of the closing rates on some of those corners. So everybody did a hell of a job, and good racing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. It was to watch you race today.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And next we have Johan van der Bauer. Johan, after the great battle you had with Brian Herring, turn 5, like many of the other cars before you, saw your downfall. And thank you very much for the battle. It was a great racing to watch between you and Brian.
Well, I'm happy. It was great racing to watch. I'm gutted. I should have had that.
What was it that happened for you there? Did you just did the car come away from you? Can you explain what happened on the 2 laps on the end going into turn 5?
Well, 3 weeks ago in Spa, I had kind of a problem that whenever I went on the gas, I think it's something with the setup that I'm not doing well. But whenever I go on the gas, especially later on in the stints, there's just a 50-50 chance that the car goes spinning. And I thought I solved that for this track. In the practice, in the qualification, everything went well, and even in the race. And I have no idea. I just touched the gas just a little, not even 20%, and I just went around. I even went more careful through that corner than normally, and still I went around.
Very, very unfortunately, the only time you did it all race meeting was the one time you didn't want to happen. But up until then, a great battle with Brian. Huh? Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, that was amazing. There was a great. All compliments to Brian for being really respectful, and well, he deserved to. He was the quicker car in that battle. I could use the straight line speed of my car as an advantage, so he couldn't pass me in the chicane. And yeah, in the S's, he was quicker, but I could keep him behind me because there's no way to pass there. And yeah, it was an amazing battle, and he just did really well. He was really great today, really fast. But still, I if I just could have kept him behind me for 1.5 lap more, I could have beaten him.
Yes. There was a moment in talking about the S's, there was a moment which had me and Cam winning the commentary box when there was any contact between the two. We were very, very close there.
Well, when was that? When I overtook him, or after that?
It was through one of the many. First of all, hi Johan. One of the many times going into the turn 2 there. Brian was notably quicker through the S's, but I have to say I'm very, very impressed with how wide you were able to make that rough car.
Yeah, that moment. Yeah, he hit a few times in the second corner. Yeah, but I don't believe we actually touched. But like he just looked. He just put his car to the side and looked if there was a gap. But I started braking, and Brian every time noticed that there was a gap. So he was just really smart with this. He just went on the brake on time. So no contact there.
Yes. Now, of course, last week you won your class in the Kia. This week you come so close. Next week you're going back to Spa, this time in the other cars. You're going to be back in the Kia, correct?
Yeah, that's true. The last race for the normal cup.
Yes, and so hopefully you can do there, but today you're going to have to settle for a second, which I will say that we were following that race for 20 minutes, 25 minutes between you two, and it was absolutely exciting almost every single corner. So very good driving for the both of you and very respectful.
Thank you.
So is there anybody you'd like to thank or anything?
Ah, Brian. You made it an amazing battle and an amazing race. So thanks, Brian. You did really well. And in the end, you were the quicker guy, so you totally deserve this.
Yeah, so it was very good there from the both of you. Dan, anything else?
Yeah, very, very good race. Also, ask you, Cam, if we were to round off the race, what would you say was the highlights of the race for you?
Well, in the beginning, that blazing start between Ryan Crofton and Kevin Binkley was very exciting. Warjack having his incident allowed Brian Herring and Johan to become the leaders of the GT. And I say leaders because they were, head to toe as it was Johan leading, and ultimately just that last 20-minute white knuckle ride that Johan and Brian gave us that was just really, really exciting.
Yeah, I'd agree. Some fantastic racing in the GT class, but a second place for Johan van der Bouw. A very good result, but come in a bit better. Thank you for your time, Johan.
Thank you guys too.
So that has been we've had a fantastic racing here at Road Atlanta. Kevin Binkley with the winner of the LMP1 class. Second place in that class was Tony Hayes. Third place was Brett Trozing. And in the fourth place was Ryan Crofton. Then LMP2 was a victory for the car of Gregory Nutley of second place. No, it wasn't Gregory Nutley, I beg your pardon. It was the car of Jimmy Eifling. Jimmy Eifling took the LMP2 win with Adam Bradshaw in second place. Then GT, which had by far the biggest amount of cars. The win was Brian Herring. We just spoken to the second place man, Johan van der Bouw. Third place was Wojciech Poszek. In fourth was Jim McInnes. Fifth, Carl Pitson. Sixth, Andy Morgan. Seventh place, someone we didn't speak much about at all in the whole broadcast, Steve Peterson, but a very solid drive from him, seventh in class. Eighth was Gordon Wilson. Ninth, Darren Kuhn. 10th was David Henry. In 11th place was Gregory Nutley. 12th, Vincent Brum, who retired. And unfortunately, I think Vincent retiring was one of the key moments of the race as well, one of our front runners, but I think Vincent would be quite disappointed with that.
Yeah, it's too bad for him. And then, of course, through the retirements, Bert Brems in the McLaren, Marcus Kramer in a rough, and the two DPs of Ryan Crofton, and Liam Quinn didn't start.
Yeah, a non-starter there for Liam Quinn, and it's been a fantastic race. And did you say the next one for these drivers is at Spa next week?
Well, that's for their normal cup. This is the Endurance Cup. Their normal cup, which you'll be even more excited when I describe it to you. They have three different classes. They've got the GTS, which is the Cadillac and the GT40. Then you've got the I think the GTO class, which is the Kia, which Johan Vanderbilt won last week at Summit Point. And then you have the MX-5 and the Spec Racer Ford racing at the same racing the same lap times.
Sounds like very, very close racing and something which just as exciting as this to watch. And for the first time in me covering this championship, I've got to say I was quite impressed with it. The driving standards were very good and a lot of respect as well between the drivers, which you don't see in all championships. So a very, very well policed and very respectful championship here, Cam.
Yes, it was great watching. Also, did I say that the front two cars, it's the Cadillac and the GT40? I totally forgot if I said the Cadillac. But either way, I mean, it was just a great racing here today, watching between Kevin Binkley trying to get through the fields, and of course that great race through the GT field, and of course even the P2 class even managed to make it exciting with seeing who could repair off a pit road first.
Yeah, so fantastic racing here, and that just about leaves all for today. I've been Dan Blake and Cam Walsh alongside me. We've had a fantastic race today from Road Atlanta, the Absolute Beginners League, providing great entertainment. Kevin Binkley being the class of the field, but the battle between Brian Herring and Johan van der Bouw making fantastic viewing. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dan Blake. Goodbye. Any final words from you, Cam, today?
Nope. Thank you for having me. Great race, and of course, thank you to Hugo Louis for our camera work.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much, Hugo, for your work. And for me, Dan and Cam, it's goodbye from now. Thank you for watching RaceSpotTV and the Absolute Beginners League.